Welcome, everyone. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. Welcome to a special CARES Subcommittee meeting. We're on to item 2, approval of the minutes from September 10th. Do I have a motion?
Talon moves.
Support by Breivy.
Moved by Commissioner Talon, support by Commissioner Breivy. Questions or comments on the minutes from last week? Any? All right, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we're on to item 3, assistance to local units of government update. I know that you all received a spreadsheet from staff earlier this week. Raymond, do you want to kick us off, or Jeff?
Yeah, Jeff Doan is here and he can walk us through that. Jeff spent quite a bit of time on this. He's also talked with several of the municipalities about this, and hopefully you can understand it. Jeff, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, so this spreadsheet, per the request of the subcommittee, I think a week ago, I put together a few options for splitting the local units of government. You can see the original survey estimate amount in the first column there, and actually the first column is the local unit, what they originally submitted in their survey. And then there's a population, straight population percent column. You can see that in the middle. We just go to the top line. Ada Township would be offered 338,653 under this scenario. And then as you go to the right, you can see the number of excuse me, cases by community and the percent of the cases, which changed the percentages a little bit. And then there was 3 options on the total allocation. The first one was 10 million on population, 5 million on case, and then split evenly at 7.5, 7.5. And then the last column is 5 million on population and 10 million on case count. And you can see what that does to the amounts per community. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if anyone has.
Jeff, this pushes out the entirety of the 15 million, these scenarios.
We would offer the amount in the columns to the communities. Now, they would have the option to accept or not. So, but this would, if they all accepted the full amount, allocate the full 15 million, yes.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'm sure we have discussion. Who would like to go first?
Mandy, it's Diane. Can you hear me?
Commissioner Jones, sure.
Thank you. Just a quick question. What items can the municipalities use these funds for?
Jeff?
They would have the same rules as everybody else with the guidance from the CARES Act. So, not previously budgeted expenditures related to COVID-19. All the restrictions would be in place on this. Now, there is some confusion on public safety dollars. The guidance has said for convenience, you can use all public safety dollars, while the Treasury or the OIG guidance says it couldn't have been previously budgeted. So it's still kind of, in my opinion, a little fluid. There's supposed to be additional guidance. I thought it would be out this week, but I haven't seen it. Plant Moran, who's been assisting us, felt comfortable using public safety dollars through June, and then an allocation based upon actual.
We'll have a follow-up. We'll have a contract with each municipality to be clearly laid out in the contract.
Correct.
Commissioner Jones, does that conclude your questions?
I had one more follow-up, which is we'll have a contract with each municipality, and this area that I just asked about will be clearly laid out in that contract?
Yes, that is correct.
He answered yes. Can you hear him?
Thank you. I'm good.
Commissioner Talon.
Thank you, Chair. Jeff, what would you propose, or what are we proposing would happen to dollars if a unit of government says either we don't want it or we don't have enough expenditures to warrant it? What happens then?
I guess that would be up to the subcommittee on how they would, if they would want to reallocate to the local units of government that had additional need over and above this allocation, and or put it to a completely different use.
Go back into the unallocated reserves, or we could say it goes to the other municipalities that have identified needs.
So if I could follow up, Chair, just
Sure.
a comment. It's really hugely concerning to me that we put a lot of effort into negotiating down the estimate from the city of Grand Rapids. And I recognize that there was not a commitment to that amount, even though as a result of the negotiations, I think perhaps a lot of folks understood it to be a commitment, but we're looking at $5 million less going to the city of Grand Rapids than what they told us and what they, from what I understood from the report on the conversations with the city, that they pretty clearly documented that they would have. So that's a huge concern for me. $5 million is a lot of money. That's almost half of what we had estimated when we put together the 15 million total. So if that money, I think at a minimum, we've got to put that money back in and reallocate it. I would hate to see it go back into the pot when the city's coming up so much short on what their costs are. I do, at some point, if it's appropriate, have a couple other suggestions for how we might mitigate that. Thanks.
Sure. Commissioner Steck.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Bolter. A couple of questions. First, following up on a inquiry from Commissioner Jones on the nature of the contract that we would have between us and the local entity. If ultimately the determination is that these dollars cannot appropriately be applied to previously budgeted public safety costs, under this contract, would the risk of that be entirely on the local community, or would it somehow be fall back on us in either a direct or a secondary way?
Chair, if you'd like me to take that.
Please.
The way we do these contracts, Commissioner, is there is language in each contract we've used from the beginning that puts the burden of compliance with all of the regulations on the recipient. So if any of our municipalities chose to spend the money on something that truly was not CARES eligible, and that was later flagged through an audit or other ways, that obligation to protect the county from that bad audit finding would rest on that municipality.
So from a legal perspective, is the primary liability ours, but we're getting indemnifications from the municipality?
Basically, yes.
Okay, okay. So a couple of other questions, if I could, Chair.
Sure.
The questions that Commissioner Townend raised about the 11 millions that came in by way of a estimate at some stage in these discussions from the city of Grand Rapids. Do we know how much of that, if any, was made up by public safety budgeted costs?
Jeff, do you have a handle on that?
Yeah, I think I have a close estimate. From what I understand, they submitted just over $10 million to the state of Michigan for April and May public safety payroll. Now I understand the total ask statewide was about $350 million. Now I haven't seen final numbers on that yet, but in that scenario, Grand Rapids would receive a prorated share of the $200 million allocation, which is 57%, or about $5.7 million. Roughly. Again, I don't have those numbers confirmed, but if those come in as reported, they should get about 5.7, somewhere in that range. And then in addition, let's not forget that the state allocated CARES money in lieu of revenue sharing, $6.5 million countywide. However, a big portion of that went to Kent County, about $2 million to the other local units of government. And I believe Grand Rapids received about $1.4 million on that allocation.
So are the numbers that you're just identifying from these other sources, is it your understanding those would be, in a sense, a set off against that 11 million or portions of that 11 million?
I guess I don't know what Grand Rapids, was anticipating the reimbursement from the state to cover. If it was a piece of that 11, I guess I'd have to get clarification from them. I don't want to speak for them on what their anticipation was for that.
Right. Well, I guess what I'm getting at is I understand the 11 came in, but then there were subsequent sources that sort of flowed back into the municipalities. And I didn't know whether, I did think that the 11 million was readjusted after that. And so there is some potential that there are other funding sources that may have covered some of these, maybe not all of them. So I guess I'm still not quite sure whether 11 million is still a fixed number, or whether it's an adjustable number. And I guess you don't know yet either.
The 11 million was not adjusted based upon the other allocations from the state of Michigan. I do know that.
All right. And so once you do that adjustment, we don't know what the end number would be.
Right. And, you know, with public safety being reimbursed through the state, that really gives each entity some general fund because that's
Yep.
direct general fund expense typically that can now get charged to CARES fund. So that should free up general fund dollars for all those entities receiving that distribution.
Okay. And in all fairness, we've sort of shifted our analysis and focus to a formulaic approach as opposed to a documented expense approach. So we really don't and haven't asked any municipalities to go back and refine their numbers.
No, we received we received some through June expenses for most of the units. You know, anticipating reimbursement, it was all over the board, which is part of the reason we kind of pivoted a little bit along with the additional money from the state. You know, some communities were submitting some special payrolls they did for public safety, just like a shift differential and things like that. Other communities weren't. The uses were all over, excuse me, all over the board on the submissions. So it was becoming difficult to determine, you know, what's a fair allocation based upon, you know, the actual uses that they were submitting to us.
Okay. So then just the last comment, and I don't know whether Jeff, you're the one for this or someone else. What's the, how would we articulate as the rationale behind using the number of cases as a reasonable and relevant allocation formula?
I think it was just another option I brought up. I believe Macomb County on the east side of the state did an allocation that way, so which was brought to my attention from Plant Moran or external auditors, just as another option, with the theory being that the higher the case count, the more need there is related to COVID.
And that seems reasonable to you?
I think it seems reasonable, yeah. If you have more cases, you're obviously doing more treatment, more testing, those types of things.
Thank you.
Mandy, you're mute.
Commissioner Brady.
Thanks, Chair Bolter. So, you know, I'm good with how this is laid out. One of the things I think it does is it really cuts, you know, red tape going between municipalities because of all the receipts that the county would have to receive and, you know, going back and forth between the governments. You know, I think that's an issue. I think this allows the municipalities to get the funds faster, which, you know, I'm sure they need. And, you know, my townships of Caledonia and Gaines have not requested a significant amount, and I don't see them upping their requests. So, you know, I would assume that we'd be getting money back to reallocate. So I'm comfortable with this scenario, knowing that we'd have, you know, funding still available. Also, you know, just keep in mind that with the business grants that were given out, the city has received, you know, nearly 60% of that. And I think, you know, in the 70% range, 74% range of the nonprofit funds. And there's still, you know, funding from the homeless shelters, PPE. So, you know, the city has definitely had a significant amount going their way. So again, you know, I feel comfortable with this new formula, and I think we should proceed with it.
Commissioner Talon again.
Thank you, Chair. First, a question, and I also appreciate kind of the simplicity of the formula. I think that's a good idea. I just have some concerns about how it, the details of the formula. I wanted to ask Jeff or maybe Wayman, whoever was involved in the conversation with the city. One of my concerns is that when you look back at the last estimate of COVID-19 expenses from September 8, we're showing $4.6 million budgeted for the Sheriff's Department, not including corrections. Corrections is a separate, larger line item. those are similar expenses to what the city would have. I assume that those expenses are for road patrol and for dispatch, because we talked about that early on in the process. So I'm wondering whether those were part of the 11 or so million that was part of the discussion with the city early on. Do you recall that, Jeff or Wayman?
Jeff, you have a better handle on that. There's quite a few conversations you've had with, I know Molly over there, the finance director. So Jeff, can you enlighten us on that? And there was a spreadsheet that they sent us at one point.
Yeah, there certainly was some payroll in there and some overtime for sure. I'd have to find the spreadsheet back to get the exact allocation for payroll. A lot of PPE, a lot of facilities modifications, but payroll was certainly a part of that. Jim, I'd have to look back and.
But it wasn't significant. It wasn't a significant portion, was it, Jeff, or no?
I want to say it was, top of my head, 2 to 3 million, roughly in that range, I believe. But at that point, it wasn't clear understanding that they could allocate 100% of public safety payroll. That guidance came out later.
Right, but I think we, as I recall, initially the sheriff did some initial tracking and based a percentage of expenses for both dispatch and road patrol to allocate toward COVID. And I assume that's what we're talking about with the 4.6 million that was budgeted. I don't know that the city knew that they could do that or should do that. That's what I'm trying to understand, because what I've tried to suggest to my colleagues is that the cities are different than the other units, because they have these additional law enforcement costs, and the city of Grand Rapids is also different because it has the dispatch cost. And so it feels like just a straight allocation based on population is not totally appropriate. I also want to remind us that this allocation to the local units of government, as I understood it, and I hope that we're all in agreement on this, isn't for programs to assist citizens. This is to help with the cost of operating units of government. So the things that we've already mentioned, PPE and salaries and personnel costs, but not for the programs, and recognizing that the program that programs that we supported already have significant residents in the city of Grand Rapids. That's not what we're talking about here. This is just for the operation of the governmental unit.
I did look it up, excuse me. The total payroll, personnel, overtime, and hazard pay was 4.7 million, so a little higher than I remembered.
For the city, that was?
Yes, of that 11.1.
For law enforcement or for all payroll?
And that was all personnel, overtime, and hazard pay they assumed was COVID related at the time.
Okay, thank you.
And then another big chunk, 3 million, was for rental assistance, which I think has been handled primarily from the county so far, from our buckets. So
3 million out of the 11?
yes, correct.
Oh, okay. That's helpful, thanks.
I don't know if Steve Duarte is on the line. It might be helpful for him to, if Jeff, you can't, but to kind of help with explaining the expenses that the sheriff had, what we are tracking for the sheriff, what is that? How is it related to COVID? And it was all tied back to what we understood at the time and still do to be COVID-related expenses covered by the CARES Act.
Yeah, so when early on, we originally asked all the departments to give us our best estimates when we got the CARES notice that we're going to get 114 million. What do you think your department's going to need? And that's where we came up with the original allocation of 35 million for county expenses. At the time, the sheriff, and I don't know if they're on the line, was, allocating by position basically what they felt was COVID related. So for instance, school resource officers were no longer working in the schools. They were reassigned to patrol. So they assumed 100% of the school resource officers were COVID related. So they went position by position, determined what they thought was, COVID, and that's how they came up with their initial estimates. Again, since then, we've gotten varying guidance from Treasury on, for administrative ease, 100% can be used. I'm still not in full agreement with that, quite frankly, and neither are a lot of other communities. So.
Final request, Chair. Appreciate that information. I'm wondering if we could, the committee could receive that kind of breakdown of what is in that 11 million from the city. It would be helpful in what I suspect will be some difficult conversations between electeds from the county and the city.
Sure, but my intention is to vote on this like soon, like in this meeting.
Yeah, no, I'm just asking for, I'm assuming that too. And if we go with this, it would be helpful to have that information that Jeff just provided.
Jeff, is that even, I mean, is it something that was on like our documents or?
It's in a spreadsheet that's not necessarily the cleanest looking because we've made a lot of adjustments. I can tell you the large categories if that would be helpful.
That would be great.
So again, we had the four.
In writing, please.
Oh, in writing. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks.
Jeff, you don't have to do that right now.
No.
Okay.
Commissioner Skaggs.
Thank you, Chair. Well, this has been a difficult issue. I just want to thank everyone for their work on this. I know we do that frequently, but there's been a lot of changing guidelines, additional money, different money, conflicting guidance, and I know it hasn't been easy. Today is September 17th, and I think I can stand with everyone from my understanding of what I've heard, and the chair's indication that she wants to vote on this, that we want to get this money out. We are running out of daylight in 2020, thank goodness. And I think it's just important that that this money get out quickly, because as of now, we have distributed no money to the localities. I took a look at some of the early documents that were given to us. I went to the Treasury website, searched a little bit on the NACO website, and it's pretty clear to me that COVID money for counties that were over 500,000, but contain cities that didn't meet that threshold of population, that NACO was pushing and eventually won, that the counties would be the entity that would push this money through to their localities because they would have the best knowledge of local conditions. I think that, the one formula that's not up here is, I think the formula, and Jeff cut out for me for a hot second, so I didn't hear exactly which county he was referring to. But the one formula that's not up here is simply 15 or 100%, and just basing it on cases, which is another option, which if I'm looking at the city of Grand Rapids, that's 49.6% of cases. You add Kentwood and Wyoming, and you're quickly looking at 75% of the cases. Now, of course, all entities had to take some precautions and have some costs involved with this. I think that, perhaps some of these localities will give money back and some of them will not. I think that the questions asked by Commissioner Jones and Commissioner Steck about the legality, make it pretty clear that any of these jurisdictions, that they will have the condition and the liability to make sure that they're spending the money on this. I think Commissioner Steck's questions about what happens if the city of Grand Rapids can't justify its full 11 million because of other money that it may have gotten from the state, well, then it can give it back. And it should give it back if it can't find a justifiable case for this. So I may have missed 1 minute of Commissioner Breevy's comments. Is there a motion on the table?
No.
There's not a motion on the table, but are you proposing an additional option?
Oh, no, I am not, Chair. Don't worry about that. I am just commenting on the fact that it is not there. And, you know, the amount for Grand Rapids in that case would be just shy of $7.5 million if we decided to do it on that. I think, you know, the most reasonable formula here is the one at the end, which is 5 million for population, because it's clear understanding that every jurisdiction needed to take precautions and have various costs associated with the pandemic, but that some jurisdictions were definitely hit harder than others. We can see, we know that, we can see it in the column under percentage of cases, and that we should certainly take that into consideration. Now, I understand that some of the business grants you know, went into the city, and some of the nonprofit grants went into the city at percentages that seem higher than its population, but I would wonder if that's where a lot of the businesses and certainly the nonprofits are at. So I would make a motion that we use the far right column, $5 million out of a bucket based on proportion of population, and $10 million in a bucket based out of proportion of cases, which I think makes really good logical sense, because this is CARES money for COVID, and cases ought to be the primary bucket that we're looking at.
We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Skaggs. Is there a second?
Steck supports.
Steck supports. Now, Commissioner Steck, you did have your hand up. Was that to support, or did you have additional discussion?
Well, I was going to, I did have some additional discussion, so I guess it's
Okay.
post-motion
Yep.
discussion at this point.
Yep.
And
Sure.
so I do concur that there is some rationale for an allocation based on population, because every jurisdiction had some obligation to respond to COVID or the mitigation orders in some way, and would have incurred additional costs. So based on population, there is some rationale to it. Also accept Commissioner Talland and Commissioner Skaggs' observations that there are unique costs associated for each entity's response to actual cases. So putting more emphasis on that does make some sense. I also accept that while the City of Grand Rapids number at 11.1 million will not be satisfied with this, there is an unknown amount of that is apparently already addressed in some of the other resources that the city would have had from the state or the feds. So I think it does have an inherent fairness to it. I suppose if you break any one of these down and you want to find some inequities, we may find them, but as an overall formula that achieves a reasonable degree of equity and fairness and gets the money out the door quickly, I think that that's the best solution and the best formula, so I support it.
Commissioner Talon.
Thank you, Chair. Wondering, I would like to see the from the units that say they don't need the money or can't document it, I would like to see that money go back into the formula. Would you like to have an amendment to that effect, or can we understand that, or how do you want to proceed with that?
I would like to get this vote done like in the next couple of minutes. And then we have a pretty robust meeting next week, which was our normally scheduled meeting, where we're going to go back through kind of where all of the allocations are hitting. Are they over? Are they under? Adam London is going to be coming in to discuss his additional needs or his concerns. So I don't want to commit to that today, because we don't really know where we're going to be at with that. I think what we do here is we vote on this. Staff immediately sends correspondence to all these units of government, first saying this is how much you would get under this formula. Do you accept it or not? We wouldn't just be cutting checks before we found out first if they could want the money or use the money. And I think we need to get a better handle on how much it is and, you know, what our needs are moving forward. So I do not want to commit to any of that today. I would like to get through this vote and then get through next meeting, and then probably the following, we'll see who utilized it and go from there.
So I just want to clarify, I was asking that the dollars be put back into this bucket, not into other buckets. You don't want that to
I
happen?
understand what you're asking.
Okay, okay.
But we also have other costs outside of government that we need to look at. We need to address all the other concerns. So I understand what you're asking, but I would
Okay.
like to not entertain that right now. Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Bolter. The one thing that I agree with Commissioner Skaggs 100% is today is September 17th. And he is absolutely right. We've got to get this money out. I represent 2 cities. They've never been known to be frivolous with money or try to use money in the wrong way. So we've got to get this money out. We'll decide later when we get the money back from those that don't need those dollars, and then we'll worry about reallocation then. My only concern is that it's clear to the governmental units that they can't wait till the end of the year to say, oh, we didn't use it, and then get it back, and then we lose that dollar to reallocate. Hopefully there's something in the agreement that if they're going to give some of this back, that they do it sooner, not later.
Yeah, my intention is we would give them a 2-week or even a week turnaround. The problem has been in the past, communication with them may need to be slightly more aggressive than sending emails to their, you know, their titled email, because a lot of those are part-time public officials. Additionally, though, we do need to consider that some of these units of government may need to run this decision through their board. So we may need to find a workable window between the time that we're doing this and the time that they need to accept or decline, because they may need to do that through, they have their own process that they have to follow as well. So I want to be respectful of that, but I also want to be respectful of them getting back to us, and we will have to probably adjust our staff approach in terms of getting a hold of them quickly, beyond email. It may take all of us contacting them because we know them personally, and making sure that everyone is getting the correspondence and we find their process. So that's kind of my thought process on that. Any other questions or comments on the motion to approve the last column, the 5 million based on population, 10 million based on...
Mandy, it's Diane.
Sure.
I'm on the phone.
Yep.
And I just wanted to acknowledge before I vote that I am the insurance agent for a few of these municipalities, and per Linda, since we're not talking about insurance premiums, I'm okay to vote.
Thank you for those comments. Always good to have that transparency.
Mandy, I don't know if she was asking that as a question for Linda or if she was just...
No, she said per Linda. She sounds like she already had the guidance.
Yes, that is correct, Chair.
All right, and I just want to make a comment that, you know, through this process, everybody's brought up great points. We all represent the people of these communities. This, you know, not everyone's going to be happy. We're not handing out $115 million to every single community. And so we're doing the best we can. We're trying to get the resources to them as quickly as possible. This is basically a block grant with the CARES guidance. So I want to make sure that is a recognition that we could continue to go down the path of scrutinizing every single receipt. My thinking on that would be the money wouldn't be out, and this would be a large portion of money we'd be back in. So to not do that and to avoid that, this was the route that I thought best, that a lot of you thought best in our discussions. Commissioner Talon.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify before we vote that I struggle to be supportive of this without ensuring that money will be reallocated back into this bucket, and recognizing that votes can be misconstrued. And I just want to be clear that I do support the basic allocation formula, but I am concerned about the potential of not reinvesting that back in, particularly into cities who I expect are going to have additional needs than what is allocated based on the formula. That's it. Thank you.
We've noted those concerns. Any other questions or comments? Don't see anyone's hand. All right. Pam, can you call the roll on this?
Sure. Commissioner Stack?
Yes.
Commissioner Breivy?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Commissioner Constein?
Yes.
Commissioner Skaggs?
Yes.
Commissioner Talon?
No.
Commissioner Womack?
Yes.
Chair Bolter?
Yes.
That motion passes.
Great. All right. Pop the agenda back up on the screen. I believe we're on to item 4 of the agenda, which is the CARES funding additional requests we've been receiving. I don't know if Steve's going to go through this or Jeff.
Yes, it would be Steve.
Steve Duarte?
Yeah, Steve Duarte. Steve, are you there?
Okay. Good morning, Commissioners. For some reason, my video won't start, but you should be able to hear me, hopefully. Included in your packet when it's on the agenda, or I mean on the screen, is a spreadsheet looking at additional needs. By additional needs, I mean money that has not officially been allocated by the subcommittee or the board, and there are outstanding issues that we need to discuss. The spreadsheet shows you 2 things. It shows the issues that I'm going to highlight, and then at the bottom, it shows that based on the potential bucket to be used, the impact on the projected net reserve. Starting with the top with the homeless and affordable housing, $800,000 to fund an assistance strategy still being considered. Some examples are additional funds for the ICCF for homelessness, and maybe additional funds for Link Up to acquire additional affordable housing. With Family Promise, the request for another $900,000, which is purely for hoteling costs. There may be, in addition to that, a consideration for administrative costs for running the program. So any contribution towards admin costs be in addition to this amount. What we're being told is that it's clear we'll need to provide non-congregate hotel shelters through probably the first half of next year. To accommodate that, we need to put more money in from CARES this year, which has to be spent by the end of the year. And they will conserve their private funds, ESG funds, and other dollars for operating the program for the first 6 months of next year. The caution I would give you is that if the FEMA funds do not cover the estimated $650,000, Family Promise has requested a shortfall in those funds be covered by CARES funds. So right now, the breakdown on Family Promise is $250,000 from unallocated reserve and an estimated $650,000 for FEMA fund. They say they've already incurred $350,000 of FEMA B funds eligible costs and they expect they would incur another $300,000 between now and December 31. Any questions on those first two?
Questions for Steve on any of those? Commissioner Talon, you have any concerns on the homelessness issue?
No, that sounds great. It's in line with discussions that I've been having with folks. So thanks for bringing that forward.
Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Bolter. I just need a clarification. I don't need the information today, but can Steve pass on what their definition of affordable housing is? So it kind of puts in perspective how far that money's going to go.
Sure. We can do that for you, Commissioner. We'll get that out today.
I don't have that handy, but I can certainly look that up. Moving down.
I don't see any other questions. Okay, Steve.
Okay. Moving down to the Convention Arena Authority. We've had varying requests, but under consideration. And I point out, none of these numbers are chiseled in stone. They're fluid, obviously. But under consideration with the Convention Arena Authority, about $2 million to cover their COVID-related costs to reopen facilities. Chamber program additions, I had that in blue because I believe the subcommittee has approved for-profit childcare, taking the money out of the remaining childcare needs bucket, which was $750,000 to handle that. Assistance for closed business, unallocated reserve of $5 million. And then we have a request to consider continuing and expanding the small business grant program. That it would be to be determined. I have not been presented with an amount for that. Of course, that comes from allocated reserves also.
Steve, okay, I'm confused. So down at the bottom, after we look at total, you've got unallocated reserve. We did already vote to take that $5 million out of reserves at the last meeting. That's got to go through full board yet, but so are you saying this is an additional $5 million to the $5 million that we approved last week?
Yeah, I have that just as earmarked as subcommittee approved, not board approved at this point.
Oh, okay. So it's the same $5 million as last week. We just haven't approved it through full board.
Yeah, but to the full board, it will reduce our unallocated reserve by that $5 million.
Okay, but then the Salvation Army $1 million and the Convention Arena $2 million and the Family Promise additional $250 and another $800,000 we have not discussed, and you're suggesting that would come out of the reserve that's remaining, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So those are up for discussion. Are we needing to decide that today, or do committee members want to discuss that further? I mean, convention, I guess I would want to know what they're using it for, and what the Salvation Army, and I guess we need more of a more robust presentation of what they're using this money for.
I guess you can do it either way, but what I really want to do was get these issues on the table so that the subcommittee knew they were out there.
Okay.
And of course, my calculation is we have 71 business days left this year to December 30th.
Right.
So I guess they just need to be addressed, either thumbs up, thumbs down soon.
So the 800,000 and the 250 down here are the 800,000 and 250 up above, correct? Or
I'm waiting for closed caption to catch up. Those numbers that are there saying, if you decided to do what I have on this sheet right now, I would be recommending that we take it from unallocated reserve. So what I'm trying to show you is if you make that decision, this is where the unallocated reserve would be at the end. So right now, if you took everything that is on this sheet and said, oh, Steve, this is great, we want to approve it, you would end up with just under $9 million in your unallocated reserve.
Okay, do we have committee discussion on that? Looks like Commissioner Deck.
Well, yeah, thank you, Chair. I guess I was asking the same question that you had. We kind of moved over this $2 million for the convention arena pretty quickly. And on the other hand, if we are going to get some more breakdown later, and this is just a conversation about additional placeholders pending further deliberation, that's fine. But I certainly would like to see something that fleshes out how do we arrive at $2 million for the convention arena.
Okay.
Steve, do you have a proposal from them, or do we have anything from them directly of how they're using it?
So we received, if I can jump in, we received an original proposal. We went back to them and said, we don't think some of these things are eligible. So we asked them to refine it. So they're supposedly coming back with a revised proposal. And it includes things, and I don't want to speak because I don't have it in front of me, but like modifications to bathroom facilities to make them hands-free. It includes like touch-free scanners, things that would help the public enter the facility safely without having people like to do inspections of bags and things like that. So possibly some HVAC modifications, things along those routes, all COVID related. So
I would say let's get their more formalized proposal, and maybe we put that one off, that decision, that $2 million decision off to next week. We can get something more specific from them out to committee members would be helpful. I'm not suggesting I have a problem with it either way. I just didn't see a breakdown, or I could have missed it in the other emails I'm getting.
We're working to get the final proposal. We've been going back and forth on some of the things in there. So
I think I don't know how everyone else feels, but I would be comfortable deciding that next week. However, the homeless, the 800,000, the 250, and the 1 million Salvation Army, how does everyone feel about moving forward with that? Commissioner Talon and then Commissioner Skaggs.
I'm fine with that. I actually had a question about a different item, so I'll hold off on that.
I understand. I'm just
Oh, okay. I wanted to go back to the for-profit childcare. I was a little surprised to see that one on there. I didn't remember approving that, and I got the impression that we approved it last meeting, but it's not in the minutes. Can somebody refresh my memory on when that was approved or discussed by the subcommittee? The 750,000. How did that get in there? What did I miss?
Steve can answer. Or Linda, go ahead.
Actually, I think Matt Nelson has all the details on that one, and he's on the call. So if you don't mind, I'll let Matt take that one and explain it.
Well, I'm not looking for an explanation of what it is, but I'm just looking to understand when we discussed it and when we approved it, was my question.
Yeah, that was earlier. Steve is on the line. He's been controlling this document, the allocation document. So Steve, can you speak to that, please?
Boy, I had it on the list at the meeting we had last week. I thought we did discuss that and put it forward, but be that as it may, certainly we are putting that program in place, and we need to, if we didn't approve it at the last meeting, we need to approve it this meeting so it can go to the board at the next meeting.
Yeah, my recollection was that this was a discussion that had to do with First Steps, or is it First Steps, the organization, and the needs that you presented, Commissioner Talon. And as we looked at this, First Steps made a proposal. I think the number was 400,000 at the end. We said that remainder would go back into the for-profit portal, and the chamber would manage the allocations from there. That's my recollection.
That's what we get First Steps, 450,000.
Yeah, 450. So the balance of that was to go through the chamber because what was identified through first steps was not the entire million.
And these are just process questions. I want to make sure we're dotting our I's on this, but do we, is that under the amount that this committee needs to approve? Can staff just make that adjustment, or, because it's pretty clear from the minutes, it should at least be documented. If it did need approval, we didn't approve it based on the minutes that I can find.
Okay,
So we
here, let me just try to clarify a little bit here. The $1 million, I think was a total of $1 million that was there. That has not been removed from the bucket. This is to say that the additional 750 from the $1 million would be distributed via the chamber versus a direct allocation is all.
Okay, so then it's actually shouldn't come off of the unallocated, the reserve, if it's already, if it's 250,000 less than what we had already established, or am I still misunderstanding it? If we already had a line item for this, and we reduced the line item and said chamber can manage it, we shouldn't be putting this as an additional need request that comes off the unallocated reserve. Am I right about that?
That's correct. It's just more of a clarification of these dollars and how they would be spent going forward is
Okay.
all it is.
May I jump in here, please? The original allocation bucket for childcare was $1.2 million. We, under contract, first steps got 450,000. There is 750,000 left in that bucket. We're saying the chamber is going to handle the for-profit childcare. Therefore, let's formally move the 750 out of that bucket into the chamber's bucket and let them manage that for the for-profit childcare.
And now that thank you. Now that I'm looking at it more closely, it looks like that 750,000 is not included in the summary at the bottom of that spreadsheet, Steve. Is that correct? So you're really not taking that out.
That is correct, sir.
I think that's what was confusing, is that it looked like something that was included below, but it actually wasn't. So, all right, that helps. Thank you.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to convey. That's what it says, source remaining childcare needs bucket. Okay. Sorry, sir.
Got it. Thanks.
Commissioner Skaggs.
Thank you, Chair. And you know, humblest apologies if this is not the right time, because I saw this in the packet. There's just a couple of TBDs over there. And I just want to, make my sense clear that I think there are other, if we're beginning to prepare for the next meeting to talk about unallocated reserves, I think there are some other things that we should consider, which would be an additional round of funding for schools. We saw Oakland County, which has twice our population, give 14 times the amounts that we gave to our schools. I think that's vital to this community being able to move forward. I talked to Tim Roz at the Right Place about the Wi-Fi. I'd like to, before we start to close things down, know that we had enough money into that bucket. And then I understand the health department's coming to us too. So I just wanted to make sure that was on the agenda.
Right.
Okay.
These are items that we've previously discussed that were kind of still hanging out there that are now kind of wrapping up that we need to pull the trigger on, to my understanding. Correct? Steve, Jeff, anyone?
Okay. Let's walk down the rest of it, and then I want to touch on number 7, which will partially, I hope, answer your question. Adult foster care determination has been made since I sent this out. It should either be handled by United Way if they're not for profit, or the chamber if they are for profit. We'll run that through there, so it won't require any of our reserves at this point. Salvation Army, we have we have a plan for a request for another $1 million for eviction prevention, coordinating with the state activity. This would be in addition to the $1 million we've already put under contract with them. Under other outstanding needs, that was there as a memo jogger for the subcommittee in case there's anything else that you're aware of or that you want to put on there for consideration. I have been in conversation with the health department. They, with Gail Brink, as recently as last night, they believe their allocation right now, as I understand it, will hold up with the only caveat being is they have applied to the state for rapid response funding for communications that they would need. If that grant does not get approved by the state, they would need an additional $1 million. This grant would be used to promote vaccine safety, and would involve TV and other media buys and additional PPE kits. So if we get the grant, we're good. If we're not, we're going to be looking at another $1 million for the health department. We were supposed to have notification on that grant last Friday. We did not receive it yet. Yes.
Okay, so I want to kind of keep this a little tighter. I feel like we're all over the place. So right now, the list we're looking at were items that we've discussed previously, or they've done maybe early on a presentation, or it's additional things that are coming through. What I wasn't clear on until you just said this, Steve, was I thought the Salvation Army $1 million was the Salvation $1 million that we've discussed previously for housing. If now you're saying it's an additional request for addiction services, that's a totally different thing. And again, I've not seen any type of presentation request. I mean, so I'm just trying to get my head around what the request is on the sheet of paper over, and then the 5 million is the 5 million we already did, or the 5 million were addition. So I'm trying to get clarity on what the question is. Below at the bottom of this sheet, after total, it appears to me that you're suggesting in the reserve pool that's left, we allocate an additional 800,000 for homeless affordable housing, an additional 250 for family promise, an addition of 2 million for the convention. The 5 million we've already voted on. It just has to be voted off the board, so that's still in that reserve pool for now. But a new Salvation Army allocation over and above what we've already agreed upon for a different service.
No.
No, it was eviction, not. Sorry.
Oh, I thought he said addiction.
No.
No, eviction.
Okay, so everything below the total, I have seen something, I don't know about other members, with the exception of the convention. So are we all good with just supporting these lines, and maybe we decide the convention one next week, or do you want to do the convention? I guess I'm not totally opposed. I didn't see a proposal. So what does the board want to do? What does the committee want to do here?
Okay. To clarify, from my perspective, hopefully, all these are what I would consider new requests from the programs we've all funded, already allocated buckets for. The 5 million I put on there, I know it's been approved by the subcommittee, but it hadn't been approved by the board, and I wanted to show the impact on the reserve funds. All this stuff is just issues hanging out that we need to make some decisions on, but it's all additional money and on top of what we've already given some of these organizations.
Okay, Commissioner Stepp.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think I've already addressed my interest in seeing more specificity regarding the 2 million on the Convention Arena Authority, and I am assuming we won't see that today. So if that is a allocation that would essentially be a singular distribution once we get a number, it seems to me we can wait a week to get that information on that one. On the Salvation Army, additional 1 million, I do understand that is to address additional eviction needs in addition to the 1 million we've already approved, but I guess I'd want to hear a little bit more with respect to that? Have they already allocated the 1 million we have given to them initially? How much is this 1 million that we add to this if we approve it? What does that do for us? What does that get us? So I guess I just want to see a little more explanation for that one.
Chair,
I believe Linda Howell has been in on some of the discussion. She may want to weigh in on that for us.
the proposal with Salvation Army is to supplement the money that the state has provided to Salvation Army for eviction prevention. The state has certain caps that tenants can only receive up to a $3,000 limit. Many of the arrearages are in the $4,000 to $4,500. So the county CARES dollars would combine with the state to keep those tenants in their homes. Without the county's supplement, the tenants could not access the state dollars. And there would be no answer or no help for them staying in their homes. So what the county's dollars does is allows us to pull down those state dollars to keep Kent County residents from facing eviction. We've talked with the Salvation Army. They do believe that they have more than enough people facing these challenges to use the $2 million total, the original 1 million and now this extra million, well before the end of December. We've also talked with our part in KCCA so that there would be a coordinated effort to use both the CARES dollars from the state, the CARES dollars from the subcommittee and the board, as well as other more limited or restricted dollars through KCCA to make sure that all these funds go as far as possible, as long as possible, to help people stay in their homes.
So again, these are not hypothetical tenants that may be coming down the road. What you're saying is the Salvation Army has actual tenants on their list who are otherwise going to get evicted now that that restriction has been lifted. And the state system doesn't fund enough in order to solve the eviction. This would supplement that. So these are actual, real people calculated to add up to needs in excess of the 1 million we've already given.
Correct. The Salvation Army has been working, the original program worked through the court system, and they would get a list of folks that were facing actual eviction proceedings, and many on the list could not access the state dollars because of the size of the arrearages. Using the county's CARES money, we can help those families stay in their homes.
Do you have any sense as to how many families we're talking about?
Not off the top of my head, but I'll be happy to get you that estimate.
Well, you could probably do a division here if you're talking about 3,000 coming from the state. The average is 4,000 to 5,000 in accumulated arrearages. So divide the 2 million with that number.
Everyone we've talked to said there's more than enough need out there to use these funds.
Steck, is that?
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Talon.
Thank you, Chair. I'm comfortable with moving these forward. I think it's a good idea to get more information about the CAA, so certainly would support that. I also wanted to comment on the to be determined item, which I assume, even though it's listed, we would not move it forward, but we'll talk about it next week. I wanted to make sure, my assumption there is that the chamber says they could use more money in the small business grant program. I also would like to hear whether the nonprofit piece could also, whether they're seeing more need. One of the comparisons I make between the nonprofit program and the chamber program is that they kind of changed their qualifications midstream in order to make more people eligible. And I'm wondering whether United Way is also doing that and whether there would be additional need if something like that would happen. So a little more information for next meeting on that would be appreciated.
Okay. Commissioner Skaggs. Unmute.
I am supportive of doing that. I'm sorry, I can't remember why my hand was up. It's been a while. So yes, I think it makes sense to go ahead and allocate these pockets. I think it's 3 from the unallocated reserves with a hold on the CIA. I'm sorry, the CAA line.
Any other comments from any other board members? Commissioners Jones or Ponstein or Breeby, does that seem okay? Do I need a motion?
Would you like a motion, Chair?
Sure.
I'll move that we approve additional allocations. I assume they have to go to the board for the line items on this report that include homeless and affordable housing group, the family promise amounts, and the Salvation Army amount. I believe
Support
those
by
are
Ponstein.
Moved by Commissioner Talon, support by Commissioner Ponstein. Just to be clear, the 5 million we've already approved last meeting, so that would go to the board anyway. And we're holding off an additional week on the 2 million. Questions or comments on the motion? Any? No hands? All right. Pam, can you please take a roll?
Sure. Commissioner Steck,
Yes.
Commissioner Breeby,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Ponstein,
Yes.
Commissioner Skaggs,
Yes.
Commissioner Talon,
yes.
Commissioner Womack,
Yes.
Chair Bolter.
Yes.
That motion passes.
All right, so we definitely, if we can go back to the agenda, we definitely need to get that detail from the convention for next week. We're on to item 5 other, I guess my other would be if we could hear from subcommittee members. My intention would be to go back through all of the buckets and have staff provide us kind of where everything's falling in terms of are there lapse funds, are there overages, do we need to change anything, and then discuss potential options for the reserve. I know Commissioner Skaggs mentioned more money to schools. Commissioner Talon wants to discuss potentially more money for cities. We need to see where we're at with the other lines. So I anticipate a pretty good update from Adam London at the health department. Any other things that the subcommittee, any other items, any other groups the subcommittee would like to hear from in preparation for next week, because it's going to come quick. Tomorrow's already Friday. Staff needs to prepare. I'd like to know of any other items, suggestions, thoughts.
Chair,
Yes.
Hold on a second. It looks like Linda has a question.
Chair, just for clarity's sake, the $750,000 for the for-profit childcare that is now we're planning on running through the chamber program. You may want a motion to move that from the childcare needs bucket to the small business bucket, just so that we don't have to double account for it. But it would still be used specifically for childcare. It's just
Okay,
it's just an accounting cleanup.
So we need that motion. Can I get
I'll
that
move that.
motion?
I'll move that, Chair Talon.
Moved by
Support.
Commissioner Talon, support by
Support, Steck.
Commissioner Steck. Do we need to
Chair.
take the roll on that real quick? Are there any questions or comments on that? So, just a procedural.
Yes.
All right, Pam, can you call the roll on that?
Sure. Commissioner Steck,
Yes.
Commissioner Breeby,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Ponstein,
Yes.
Commissioner Skaggs,
Yes.
Commissioner Talon,
Yes.
Commissioner Womack. Commissioner Womack? Looked like Commissioner Womack. Commissioner Womack? Chair Bolter?
Yes.
That motion passes.
Okay, any other concerns, comments, questions regarding technical procedures before we move on? Seeing none. Okay, back to item 5. Any other comments, questions? We do need to prepare for next week. It looked like Commissioner Steck had his hand up. Commissioner Steck.
Yeah, just a question. Some of us have had our inboxes inundated with some inquiries relative to cure violence, and I understood there was some level of conversation or evaluation about whether that qualifies for these COVID care funds. Am I correct that that is still being looked at by staff at some level, and they will report back to us either in the meeting or out of the meeting?
Yeah, I do want to clarify that, and Wayman can probably chime in as well, but we did have a meeting last month with the mayor and Mark Washington. They did mention this. There was some concern about who the fiduciary would be. We've looked at potentially other options. I've never been given a formal request. I don't know a lot about the organization or the program. I think we need to definitely know much more about the program. I had heard that the prosecutor and sheriff were supportive, though I need to confirm that I do remember the prosecutor sending something, but I want to go back and confirm that that's specifically what he was concerned with. We are doing some other smaller things to address some of the youth violence and youth issues. But I think we definitely need to get more information on this. I'm hearing really conflicting arguments for and against this program. So I think we need more information. Wayman, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, we have met with the organization, Urban League, a couple of times now. Met with them again yesterday, and we had some additional questions. And they're going to come back on Monday, I believe, to provide us additional information and an updated or a proposal, rather. It's not an updated proposal, or a more formal proposal on Monday. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Linda.
No, you have that right. We expect a formal proposal on Monday.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? I expect the chamber to give us a pretty detailed accounting of what's happening. I assume that the agreements are being worked up for the additional $5 million that we discussed, so that once that's formalized in the next board meeting, full board, that will be kicking off. We should be hearing or getting at least an approval of or an update from the nonprofit groups. So my thought would be we will get a very detailed and as up to date as possible analysis of each of the allocations, and then a potential discussion on what we would do with reserve. Also hoping that staff can give us deadlines in terms of what we need timeline wise of what has to be decided and sent to the Fed. My understanding, we did have to send something by November 1st of our intention of how we're spending the money. I don't know if there's additional, but kind of a timeline would be good and helpful to the subcommittee, I believe. Looks like we've got some hands up since Commissioner Talon.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to reiterate my interest in not necessarily in a presentation next week, but getting more information before next week on the potential need in the nonprofit arena on support for those organizations. We've boosted the support for the for-profit, so let's just check back in with them, and would be good to hear from staff about that. Thank you.
Okay. Any other concerns, lines? I also hope to have a much more detailed and up-to-date analysis from potentially Right Place on the hotspot progress. As everyone knows, it's one of my priorities, and so I really hope that we have a lot of good progress on that, and hope to get some more information on that as well. Also, we would have some more information on schools. To Commissioner Skaggs' point, we are not getting a lot of participation. Just we're having to go back through and contact them directly again. I'm concerned that some of our correspondence might have went to spam. It at least did in 2 of my my schools. So just making sure that we kind of have an analysis of who has engaged in agreement and who hasn't. And I'd also be interested in some sort of demographic breakdown in terms of where some of this funding is landing in the county so that we can have a better picture of that as well. Any other questions, comments, concerns before we go to public comment?
Andy, it's Diane. And a
Commissioner
quick
Jones.
comment, happy birthday, and I give you permission to take the afternoon off.
Thanks. Unfortunately, I can't, but thanks. Questions, comments, other concerns?
Just a quick one, Chair. This is Jim.
Sure.
I just want to take a second to express appreciation for what I think has been a fairly heavy lift with county staff on the area of families and individuals that are experiencing homelessness. It's been a lot to learn, a lot to figure out and understand the system. I think we're about where I would hope that we could be in supporting that work, and really want to express appreciation both to this committee and to the staff for learning more about that and stepping up to the plate to help support it. So thank you.
Yep. Been a lot of work, that's for sure. Okay, let's move on to public comment. Item 6. Do we have anything in the email inbox or any hands raised?
No hands raised and no messages in the inbox.
Okay. All right, so we will be meeting next week. I would set your calendars for, unfortunately, for some, a long meeting. If needed, we'll take a break in between, and hopefully staff will have time to prepare all the information. If you do anticipate you're going to want something from staff, please get it to them as soon as possible. I'd appreciate it if you CC'd me so I know what you're requesting, and as we develop the agenda for next week.
What we'll try to do, Chair, is to get you as much of this information that you've requested out ahead of time.
Okay.
Paragraphs, and then bring those in front of you, the right place, others, the chamber, and so forth, to answer additional questions that you would have. That's our plan.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, with that, we are adjourned till next week, September 24th at 9:30. Have a great day, everyone.
Good show. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Mandy
Thank
Bolton.
you.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Birthday.